Good evening. You're watching ARIRANG News at 8. It's Tuesday, February 4th here in Korea. Live from Seoul, I am Yoo Ji-hye. Well, the two Koreas will hold working-level talks tomorrow to set the date and location for a fresh round of reunions for families separated by the Korean War. The meeting will take place on the North Korean side of the truce village of Panmunjom at 10 a.m. Korea time. And South Korea's unification ministry said Tuesday that the two sides have exchanged a list of their three-member Red Cross delegations through the Inner Korean hotline. The talks come after North Korea broke its week of silence on Monday to propose that the Koreas meet for working-level dialogue on either Wednesday or Thursday. Seoul had previously proposed holding the reunions from February 17th to the 22nd at North Korea's Mount Kumgang resort. On the financial front, it might be time to buckle up as Asian markets, including Korea's benchmark Kospi, are bracing for heavy losses after stocks on Wall Street plunged more than 2% on Monday. It was the biggest fall since June as worries over U.S. and global growth continue to mount. Yoo Di-an reports.
Fresh concerns about the strength of the global economy on the back of weaker than expected data out of the United States and China sent stocks tumbling on Tuesday. Taking a cue from overnight losses on Wall Street, the Korean Kospi closed below the 1900 mark, falling 1.7% to 1886. Japan's Nikkei 225 closed at its lowest level in 3 months, falling by over 4%, while MSCI's broadest index of Asia-Pacific shares outside of Japan fell 1.4%. U.S. stocks suffered their worst drop since June on Monday, with the Dow Jones Industrial Average tumbling 326 points, or 2.1%, to 15,372. The S&P 500 and the Nasdaq slumped 2.3 and 2.6% respectively. Monday's sell-off was sparked by data that showed new order growth in the U.S. manufacturing sector in January plunged by the most in 33 years, while spending on new construction projects barely rose from December. Experts say the U.S. economy has hit a soft patch.
We do know through the latter part of 2013, businesses seem to ramp up their inventories, perhaps a little bit more than they wanted to, so a lot of people were expecting that production would slow a little bit.
Stocks were also pressured by concern over China's economy, which saw service sector growth in January stutter to a 5-year low. And this is shaking the confidence of investors, who have their feet deep in U.S. stocks.
Most investors have about 80% of their equities in U.S. equities, and also have anywhere from 60 to 80% of their total portfolio in stocks, which is far too concentrated.
With the U.S. Federal Reserve expected to further taper its massive stimulus program over the coming months, it looks like the market uncertainty is here to stay, at least for the time being. Yoo Di-an, ARIRANG News.
The foreign experts' take on the sharp sell-off of stock markets worldwide. We go one-on-one with Dr. Kim Byung-ju, head of KLMP Consulting and a longtime commentator on ARIRANG News. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening.
It was another day, an ugly day of trading in the markets. Well, world stocks mostly lower today. Is this just a rumble or an emergence of something new to the downside?
You know, the thing is, the picture seems to be a little bit different now. For quite some time, we've been talking about 3D trouble. The downturn in China and the deflation in Europe, and also devaluation in emerging markets. Downturn in China has been causing a lot of concerns in the minds of a lot of people for the past few months, of course. And this year looks like the picture is not going to be very good because Chinese are trying to kind of reduce their market liquidity, and as a result of that, overall economy seems to be slowing. That's what the latest indicator seems to be showing on the service side as well as manufacturing side. And European deflation is a big concern because this is a time when they really need some certain kind of rebound now, but it's not showing because of this deflation concerns. And devaluation in the emerging markets as a result of this US QE concerns, the emerging markets, we see the outflow of capitals, and as a result of that, their currency values going down. The thing is, now, in addition to this 3D trouble, we're seeing something new. Yesterday or the day before yesterday, this manufacturing index in the United States showed actually United States economy itself may be kind of slowing itself. Not a very good timing at this time. And that has shaken the confidence in the U.S. market big time. And this is a new big addition And because of that, I think overall, globally, worldwide, we see this trouble. So this is a new development because there has been some certain confidence inside the U.S. market that U.S. economy itself is heading up. But now with this new indicator, overall, the investors worldwide are losing confidence. So it looks like we're not going to see any time like quick upward movement of the market. So for a while, I think we may be seeing this. But my own bet is in the Korean market, I don't think we're going to continuously see the fall of the stock market itself, but rather kind of like a gyration or fluctuation for quite some time.
Let's talk about Kospi more. What do the latest Kospi index and one exchange tell us about where we are?
We have prepared 3 charts, so let's take a look at them one by one, and maybe we can have a better idea. I mean, this fall below 1900 point itself was a big deal, and that's where we stand far right side here at this point. But even though we lost that 1900 point, the thing is, if we compare with what was happening last year sometime in the summer, we had really much lower points before. So where we stand right now, it's not that bad. It's only because the market has been kind of hovering around at the point of 2000 and 1900. We seem to be hit quite hard by this recent development. But in the longer term perspective, which is shown on the screen, we're not that bad at this point. So that's the one point to keep in mind. Currency side, let's go to next chart here, and that will tell us, this is more dramatic illustration of where we stand, weakening of won over time. The thing is, since the end of December, I suppose, the valuation of won has fallen quite dramatically here. So for those of us who are closely watching the market, this is concerning phenomena. But if we take a look at a longer view, which will be next chart, let's take a look at it. Actually, where we stand right now, it's not that bad. The far right side, that's where we stand. But comparing with what was happening last summer, for instance, current situation in Korea is nothing to be totally concerned about. So as I said before, this is just market fluctuation in a market which is Korea, which stands, relatively speaking, firmer than other markets around the world. And so what we are seeing at this point is not something that we should be too much concerned about.
Well, we've seen abrupt interest rate rises in India, Turkey, and South Africa,
Right.
and investors are betting that Hungary and Russia will be the next emerging economies to defend their currencies. Will Korea follow suit?
Well, the thing is, Economy 101 tells us when the capital flows out of these emerging markets, what they have to do is raise their interest in order to increase the attractiveness of their market. So that's why some of the Korean economists are now talking about the possibility of raising interest rate here in Korea. The thing is, however, Korea, unlike other emerging markets, already has a huge, big foreign exchange reserve. And if we raise interest rate, it will further increase. And when you see your foreign exchange reserve increase in your country, what you expect as a result of it is strengthening of your currency. And Korean currency, I just saw it, in a longer term view, we're on a stronger side of the currency valuation. So we don't want to see the Korean won further, gaining valuation here. So that's not exactly an option. And domestically speaking, if we increase interest rate, what happens? Well, our biggest concern in this economy is, of course, the household debt. So you don't want to have a higher rate further burden in order to further burden this household debt here. So that's not an option at this point. So looks like we're not going to see any time soon, in my own view at least, interest rate hike here in this country. But however, some people are talking about it. For now, I think considering the nature of the central bank, especially under the current leadership of the current governor, I think until the end of his term, I don't think we're going to see a big change here.
Right. Speaking of the current head of the Bank of Korea, he only has 2 months to go until his tenure is up, and all eyes are on who will be next.
Right.
What expertise or qualifications do you think he or she should have?
Well, the thing is, I think the true quality of the central bank governor actually shines not in the time of trouble here in Korea, then rather, I think it really shows the true quality during the normal times. Because in Korea, when there is an action needed, which is the time for trouble, there is a consensus. Everybody says it's time for raising the interest rate or it's time for cutting the rate. So the normal times, what governor should have is his or her own confidence in moving the rate up or down to a level where it will always stand, giving enough room for maneuvering when the time for trouble comes, right? And that was lacking for the current governor because he was not someone who has been continuously watching the rate for during his career, and he didn't really have confidence about that kind of maneuvering. So hopefully, next governor will come in with much greater confidence and conviction about how to, operate the monetary policy. So hopefully, maybe I don't know, somebody from the inside central bank. I'm not sure exactly about that, but no stronger tie or political tie to the presidency or the government itself. And I think someone who can uphold the independence of the central bank will make a bigger difference.
All right, Dr. Kim, thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
That very visit.
Touch base with journalists, experts, and analysts who are taking the pulse of Asia's heartbeat.
South Korea's defense minister.
In a lively half hour, join ARIRANG's Yoo Ji-hye for the day's top stories, current affairs, business, technology trends, plus global weather forecasts and more. ARIRANG News. Every weeknight, live on ARIRANG TV.
Exactly 4 months from today, on June 4th, Koreans will head to the polls to elect the new heads of local governments. It may be months away, but the rival parties have officially started their tight race to the finish line. Kim Hyun-ji reports.
The pre-registration of candidates for the June 4th local elections began on Tuesday and will run until May 14th. The elections cover 17 provincial governor and mayoral seats, as well as positions for education superintendent and local assembly members. Those who choose to register during this period can carry out certain kinds of campaign activities, allowing voters to gain an early understanding of the candidates running in their region ahead of the main candidate registration period in mid-May. While busily contacting political heavyweights for the upcoming elections, the ruling Saenuri Party is trying to deflect the opposition's attempt to paint the elections as an early-term evaluation of the Park Geun-hye administration. Saenuri Party floor leader Choi Kyung-hwan has stressed the local elections are about picking the best leaders for local governments, and not about passing judgment on how the Park administration has done thus far. The main opposition Democratic Party leadership has issued a political reform plan in an apparent bid to get the upper hand in its competition against the dark horse of the opposition, independent lawmaker Ahn Cheol-soo, who generated excitement among voters with his plans to reform politics in 2012. The Democratic Party's political reform proposal centers around scrapping the privileges of lawmakers and includes having all lawmakers report to an independent ethics committee their plans for overseas travel and commemoration ceremonies for the publication of their books. Ahn is aiming to launch his own party by March and field candidates for all 17 provincial governor and mayoral seats. With the addition of Ahn's party, the June local elections are expected to be a three-way race for the first time in 16 years. The Democratic Party is leaving room for cooperation with Ahn's party, saying the public wants the liberal opposition bloc to unite and win the June local elections to ring the bell on the conservative Park administration. But since it's not clear whether Ahn will reciprocate, a major reshuffle of the opposition bloc seems inevitable. Kim Hyun-ji, ARIRANG News.
And shortly after registration began for preliminary candidates for the June elections, President Park Geun-hye ordered officials to keep a close watch on them. Speaking at a cabinet meeting on Tuesday, President Park said as the June local elections are the first elections to be held during her administration, they must be fair and clean. The president ordered government ministries to make sure that the political neutrality of the elections is kept and added that she will penalize anyone involved in acts of corruption. So might the year of the horse usher in a new year of bipartisan harmony within the halls of the National Assembly? The chief of the ruling Saenuri Party reached out to the opposition on Tuesday, calling for cooperation across party lines to deal with the problems facing the nation. Kim Young-gil has more.
At the beginning of this month's extra-parliamentary session on Tuesday, ruling Saenuri Party chairman Hwang Woo-yeok called for bipartisan efforts to tackle the country's pending issues.
We need to form a long-term bipartisan coalition in order to implement effective state policies in the future. We can set up an organization in the National Assembly to promote the coalition.
The ruling party chief also spoke out on two issues, the domestic economy and North Korea. He vowed to work with the opposition to implement the 3-year economic innovation plan announced by President Park Geun-hye last month. The focus will be fostering the creative economy and balancing the economy as a whole by expanding the focus beyond foreign exports to stimulating domestic demand. He also stressed that Korea needs to strengthen the competitiveness of its smaller firms.
The government needs to better support Korea's small and mid-sized firms so that they can grow like Korea's major conglomerates and have a strong presence in global markets.
Hwang also urged rival parties to pass a long-pending bill on North Korea's human rights situation and to encourage more cultural exchanges between South Korea and North Korea. He said national integration was a first step to moving toward inter-Korean reunification. Kim Young-gil, ARIRANG News.
Balancing full-time work as a mother is tough no matter where you are in the world, but working mothers in Korea have an especially difficult time with the juggling act. But help is coming thanks to a new series of government measures. ARIRANG's Hwang Ji-hye tells us more.
31-year-old Han Ji-hee quit her job as a video editor 7 months ago when she gave birth to her son Taemin. Han says it was impossible to raise her newborn and hold a full-time job.
I didn't want to quit my job, but I had no choice. There was no one to help me raise the baby, and I felt uneasy about putting him in a daycare center.
Han is not alone. Working moms in Korea face numerous obstacles at work that force many to quit. They include a lack of childcare services amid a male-dominated business culture, and to tackle them, the government unveiled a comprehensive plan on Tuesday aimed at making the nation's female workforce a new growth engine.
The best policy alternative when birth rates are low and the population is aging is higher female participation in the labor force. An OECD report also shows that Korea would add 1 percentage point to growth annually if it had equal gender employment.
Programs to support female workers were drawn up in line with women's life cycles. They include increasing subsidies for parents on childcare leave, encouraging flexible working hours, expanding the number of public nurseries, and improving vocational training to make it easier for women to return to their careers. The government also plans to operate and support a pool of substitute workers that can fill in gaps at companies created by workers going on parental leave. However, further support for small and medium-sized businesses is needed.
Large companies will be able to follow the government plans, but SMEs with small workforces will face difficulties in finding substitute workers.
Korea's female employment rate sits at just 54%, much lower than the OECD average of 65%. The government believes that boosting the female employment rate is a crucial factor in achieving its ambitious goal of raising the overall employment rate to 70%. Hwang Ji-hye, ARIRANG News.
And moving now to a devastating oil spill in the southern port city of Yeosu. It's been 5 days since more than 160 tons of oil gushed out into the ocean after a tanker collided into pipelines. The cleanup operations are well underway, as are the questions about who was culpable in the accident. Our Kwon So-hwa has the details.
Cleaning up the Yeosu oil spill will be harder than initially expected. While volunteers and authorities are doing all they can to reduce damage from the Lunar New Year's Day accident, tidal currents and winds are making things worse. In addition to waters off the southern port city of Yeosu in Jeollanam-do province, the oil has spread north, south, and east from the original spill site to Namhae-gun County in Gyeongsang-namdo province, where an oil slick measuring roughly 30 kilometers in diameter has formed. Aside from the cleanup efforts, questions are being raised about the accident itself. The head of the Yeosu Maritime Police Department said Monday that 164 tons were spilled, which is 200 times greater than the first estimates by the company said to be responsible for the accident, GS Caltex. The spill happened after a Singapore-registered oil tanker hit a landing bridge, causing 3 underwater pipelines operated by GS Caltex to rupture. The Yeosu Coast Guard blames the tanker's pilots for exceeding the recommended speed on approach and GS Caltex for not reporting the spill until 30 minutes after it occurred. Residents affected by the spill say they're worried the pollution could lead to health problems and impact fishing, a primary source of income for many in the area.
When I first saw the news, they said it wasn't a big amount of oil that spilled. That's why I didn't think it would spread this far to where I work.
While officials say it is not difficult to get rid of the oil spilled in the water, the bigger problem lies on the seashore, where the cleanup process could take weeks. In the meantime, the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries said Tuesday that GS Caltex should compensate those affected. The ministry, company, and related authorities are scheduled to hold a meeting on the issues surrounding the spill on Thursday. Kwon So-ah, ARIRANG News.
Just 2 more steps to go before the school textbooks in the U.S. state of Virginia used the name EC next to Japanese name Sea of Japan when referring to the body of water between the two countries. The House of Delegates Education panel passed a dual name designation bill in an 18-3 vote. Virginia State Governor Terry McAuliffe said Tuesday that he is willing to sign the legislature once it passes to full assembly Thursday, where it is widely expected to win approval. Korea argues the Japanese name for the sea reflects Japan's imperialistic aggressions. With the Sochi Winter Olympics just 4 days away, Russia is taking zero chances with security, stepping up measures to extraordinary levels. But experts warn Islamist extremists may be able to find a way through the ring of steel around the city. Our Connie Kim has the details.
With just a few days left until the torch is lit to signal the start of the Sochi Winter Olympics, security measures have been stepped up even further. Amid serious concerns, Islamist elements within Russia's restive south could be plotting a terrorist attack. Experts point out terrorist elements may already be around the area, sitting like sleeper cells awaiting instructions. Citing a bomb attack at a stadium in the Chechen capital Grozny in 2004, a security expert says the bomb used then was embedded in a concrete pillar 3 months prior to its detonation. Ian Von Gordon, director of a protection training institute, says Sochi is bound to be a target as extremist Islamist groups in Russia's Caucasus region have vowed to launch an attack if the games go ahead in Sochi. He says it's highly likely people with ties to these groups have applied to work as contractors or employees for construction companies used to build Olympic facilities. Some 100,000 contractors are estimated to have been working at Olympic venues, working as bus drivers, or in sewer construction. Security may be the main concern, but it isn't the only thing making officials sweat despite the chilly temperatures, as much of the construction for athlete and media accommodation is still not completely finished. With a record $51 billion poured into the games by the Russian government, hotels still sit unfinished, buildings unnamed, and it's easy to spot people on ladders doing some last-minute fixing and drilling. Although the sports venues are ready to go, the eyes of the world will be fixed to see whether Russia, with little experience of hosting huge events, has what it takes to successfully host one of the world's premium sporting events. Connie Kim, ARIRANG News.
Well, let's go over to our Kim Bo-kyung at the Weather Center for a check on the weather. Now, Bo-kyung, today was another freezing cold day here in Seoul. Any relief in sight?
Good evening, Jihae. Let's try to hang in there for a bit because we will get back to our seasonal average temperature starting tomorrow afternoon. Taking a look at the current conditions, we are under the influence of a cold high pressure system, which is why we're seeing absolutely clear skies across the map. Well, currently temperatures say that it's -5 degrees here in Seoul, but the wind chills make it feel like it's -12. So if you're headed out for a late night trip, please be sure to dress warmly. Other than that, cold wave advisories are still in effect throughout the country, including the Gangwon-do and Gyeonggi-do provinces. On top of the cold, dry weather is back in some parts of the central and east coast regions. Taking a look at tomorrow's readings, Seoul starts off the day at -10 degrees with a high of -1. Meanwhile, Daegu and Gwangju hit 2. Moving on to other regions, Jeju reaches 4 degrees while Dokdo and Mount Kumgang peak at -2 and -9 degrees respectively. Well, that's all I have for you this hour. Stay warm in the cold, and I'll see you again after 10.
And that's our broadcast on this Tuesday evening. I'm Yoo Ji-hae in Seoul. Thanks for watching.